He is alone. The river is black, moving fast, and he has sent everyone he loves to the other side. His wives, his children, his servants, his flocks. Everything he owns is across the water, and he is standing here in the dark with nothing but the sound of the Jabbok River and whatever is about to happen to him. His name is Jacob, and before this night is over, that name will be gone. Something grabs him. He doesn't see it coming. One moment, he is standing alone, and the next, there are hands on him. Strong hands, strangers' hands, and the fight begins. They wrestle through the dark. Two figures locked together on the bank of a river no one important has ever heard of, and neither one wins. The night stretches on. Jacob does not let go. We will come back to this river. We will find out who the stranger is, but not yet, because first, you need to understand something about the ancient world that most people raised in the modern West completely miss. A name was not a label. It was not what your parents liked the sound of, or a family tradition, or something chosen from a baby name website. In the ancient Near East, a name was a verdict. A name told you, and everyone around you, what a person was, what they were for, what they carried. When a king named a city, he claimed it. When a father named a child, he shaped that child's destiny. And when God renamed someone, when the creator of the universe looked at a human being and said, that name is finished, here is what I am calling you now. That was not a nicety. That was surgery. We are going to look at 5 people in the Bible whose names God rewrote. 5 people who walked into an encounter one person and walked out another. And at the end, you will understand something about your own name and your own story that you may never have considered before. The first name change in the Bible belongs to a man sitting outside his tent in the heat of the day. He is 99 years old. His wife is 89. And for the past 24 years, since God first appeared to him in Mesopotamia and told him to leave everything he knew, he has been waiting for a son. His name at this point is Abram. In Hebrew, Abram, exalted father, which is almost cruel when you think about it. He is a father of no one. His wife cannot conceive. He has one son by a servant woman, a boy named Ishmael. And for 13 years, he has been quietly wondering whether that's what God meant all along. And then God shows up again. And God says something astonishing. He says, your name will no longer be Abram. Your name is Abraham, Avraham, father of a multitude, not father of a son, not father of a few, father of a multitude, of nations, of kings, of people, too numerous to count. God did not name Abraham for what he was. God named him for what he was about to do. The name arrived before the miracle, before Isaac, before the laughter and the tears and the long wait finally ending. Think about what you would do with that. Abraham had to walk around for an entire year, talking to his neighbors, introducing himself at the well, answering when people called his name, knowing that every syllable was a promise that hadn't come true yet. Every time someone said Abraham, he was holding a word that weighed more than he could carry, and he carried it anyway. Here's what most people miss about Sarah. We talk about Abraham constantly. We mention Sarah as a footnote, but God changed her name too, in the same breath, in the same chapter. Sarai became Sarah. Both names carry the root meaning of princess or noblewoman, but the shift matters. Sarai was a private title, a name for one household. Sarah, God said, would be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples would come from her. She had laughed when she heard this. She was standing behind the tent flap, and she heard the visitors tell Abraham that she would have a son within the year. And she laughed to herself, quietly, privately. And God heard it, not with anger, with the question, is anything too hard for the Lord? She denied laughing. She was afraid. And God, rather than withdrawing the promise, named her anyway. Sit with that for a moment. She doubted. She laughed. She lied about laughing, and God gave her a new name and kept his word. Now, we move forward roughly 2,000 years to a different kind of man. He smells like fish. His hands are rough from rope and net and salt water. He is the kind of man who talks before he thinks and acts before he's sure. And sometimes that gets him in trouble, and sometimes it doesn't. And most of the time, he can't tell the difference until it's too late. His name is Simon. His father's name is John. He is an ordinary fisherman from Galilee, and he has no particular reason to think he will ever be anything else. And then his brother Andrew brings him to meet a rabbi. The rabbi looks at him. The text in John's gospel says it simply, Jesus looked at him. And then Jesus says, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas." Cephas, Aramaic for rock. In Greek, Petros, Peter. You will be called, future tense. Not, you are a rock. Not, you remind me of a rock. You will be, someday, eventually, when the name fits. Here's the part nobody tells you. Jesus gave Simon this name before everything. Before the miraculous catch of fish. Before the walking on water. Before the transfiguration on the mountain. And long, long before the night in the high priest's courtyard, when a servant girl asks Simon if he knows the man being tried inside. And Simon says, 3 times with increasing desperation, that he does not know him. He denied Jesus 3 times. By firelight in a courtyard, while the name Peter, rock, foundation, unshakable, sat on him like a garment he had not yet grown into. Eusebius, the church historian writing in the 3rd century, noted something striking. The name Cephas was almost never used as a personal name before Jesus gave it to Simon. It was a title, a description. Jesus was not giving Simon a common name. He was making a declaration about what this stumbling, impulsive fisherman was going to become. The name came first. The man had to catch up, and he did. Decades later, in an upper room in Jerusalem, the same Simon Peter stood up before 120 frightened, bewildered followers of a man who had just ascended into the sky, and he preached. And 3,000 people were baptized that day. The rock held, but it held because someone named it Rock before it knew how to be one. Stay with me. The 5th name change in our story is the quietest one. You might expect a flash of light. You might expect an angel or a voice from heaven, or at least a moment worthy of the man. After all, this is Paul, the one who wrote half the New Testament, who planted churches from Jerusalem to Rome, who stood before kings and governors and said the same thing he said to slaves and merchants in the market square. But when Luke records the shift in Acts, he does it in half a sentence. Then Saul, who was also called Paul, that's it. No fanfare, no ceremony. Chapter 13, verse 9. Saul, also called Paul. And from that verse forward in Acts, Luke never calls him Saul again. What happened? Paul already had his name. He was a Roman citizen by birth, which meant he carried both a Hebrew name, Saul, and a Roman name, Paulus, from the moment he entered the world. For the first half of his life, he used Saul. He was a Hebrew of Hebrews, trained under the great Rabbi Gamaliel, a man whose entire identity was rooted in the covenant people of Israel. And then Jesus stopped him on the Damascus road, and something cracked open in him. And as Paul began to understand that his calling was to the Gentiles, to the Greeks, the Romans, the people outside the covenant, he picked up his Roman name and started using it. The name change was not dramatic. It was a decision. And that is its own kind of courage, to pick up the name that fits the calling, even when it means setting down the identity you were most comfortable with. Now, this is important. God is not the only one in this story who renames people. In the 1st chapter of Daniel, 4 young men are taken from Jerusalem to Babylon. Their names are Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Each of those names carries the name of God inside it. Daniel means God is my judge. Hananiah means God has been gracious. And the empire knows this. So the empire changes their names. Daniel becomes Belteshazzar, named after the Babylonian god Bel. Hananiah becomes Shadrach. Mishael becomes Meshach. Azariah becomes Abednego. The empire was trying to perform surgery, erase the old identity, install a new one that serves the new master, and it worked on the outside. The book of Daniel itself uses both sets of names, shifting depending on who was speaking. At court, they were called by the Babylonian names. That was simply true. But inside, in the choices Daniel made about what he would eat and what he would not worship, and whose laws he would kneel before, he remained exactly who God had named him to be. The world will try to rename you. Sometimes it uses loud names, worthless, too broken, too far gone, too late. Sometimes it uses quiet ones, the name your family gave you in your worst moment, the one you whisper to yourself at 2 a.m. But Daniel tells you something worth remembering. The name on the outside is not always the name on the inside, and God is not confused about which one is real. And this is where it gets remarkable. We are going back to the river. It is still dark. Jacob is still fighting, and you need to know what brought him here, because it matters more than the fight itself. Jacob's name, his original name, meant heel grabber. In Hebrew, Yaakov. He was born grasping his twin brother Esau's heel, and the name stuck to him like a verdict. A heel grabber was a supplanter, a schemer, someone who pulls you back to get ahead. And Jacob lived up to it. He tricked his brother out of a birthright for a bowl of lentil stew. He deceived his blind, dying father to steal a blessing that wasn't his. He ran from Esau's fury for 20 years, lived with his uncle Laban, who out-schemed him in return. 7 years of labor, the wrong wife, another 7 years, and built a family through cunning and competition and one long, exhausting dance he had been doing his entire life. And now Esau is coming with 400 men. Jacob has tried everything. He has sent waves of gifts ahead, flock after flock, hoping to soften whatever is in his brother's chest before he arrives. He has prayed, genuinely and desperately, the most honest prayer in his whole story. And now he is alone at the Jabbok in the dark, and something grabs him and the fight begins. They wrestled until the breaking of the day, all night, neither one winning. And then, with the sky beginning to lighten, the stranger does something that reveals who he is. He touches Jacob's hip, just touches it, and the socket wrenches out of place. Jacob is now wrestling with a dislocated hip, and he still does not let go. The stranger says, "Let me go. The day is breaking." And Jacob, who has spent his entire life taking and tricking and running, says something he has never said before. He says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me. Not unless you spare me. Not unless you explain yourself. Not unless you let me win. Bless me." The stranger asks, "What is your name?" And here is where you feel the weight of it. Because God did not ask Abraham this question before renaming him. Jesus did not ask Simon, but Jacob is asked. He has to say it out loud. He says, Jacob, heel grabber, schemer, the man who took what wasn't his and spent 20 years running from the wreckage. He says it. He owns it. And in that moment of honesty, in the exhaustion and the pain and the gray breaking dawn, the stranger says, "Your name will no longer be Jacob. Your name is Israel, for you have striven with God and with men, and you have prevailed." Yisrael, from the Hebrew Sarah, to struggle, to strive, and El, God, the one who wrestles with God, not the one who was worthy, not the one who was ready, not the one who had lived without deceit, the one who would not let go. Josephus, writing in his Antiquities of the Jews, records the tradition that this figure was divine. And the prophet Hosea, centuries later, makes it explicit. Jacob strove with God. He wrestled with God. And God, the God of the universe, the one who called light out of darkness, let him hold on until morning. Jacob asked, "Tell me your name." And the stranger said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. Jacob walked away from that river with a new name, a wound he would carry for the rest of his life, and a limp that meant every single step he took from that morning forward was a reminder. He had met God in the dark. He had held on, and the holding on was enough. Pay attention to this. The name Israel, the name that became the name of 12 tribes, of a nation, of a covenant people stretching across centuries, was born on a riverbank in the dark, from a man with a dislocated hip who refused to let go until he was blessed. The name was born out of the struggle, not despite it. So what do you do with all of this? 5 people, 5 name changes. Abraham carrying a name that meant father of millions for a year before his son was born. Sarah laughing behind a tent flap and getting named anyway. Simon stumbling through 3 denials while wearing the name Rock. Paul quietly switching to the name that fit his calling and never looking back. Jacob limping into the sunrise with a wound and a word. Here's the first thing you take from this. God's name changes are always forward-looking. He does not rename you for what you have done. He renames you for what he is going to do through you. Abraham was not a father of nations when he received that name. Peter was not yet a rock. They were named into the future, not defined by the past. And if God were to name you today, right now, in whatever season you are sitting in, the name would not be a catalog of your failures. It would be a declaration of what he is not finished building in you. Here's the second thing. The new name almost always comes with a wound. Abraham bore the covenant in his body. Jacob walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Peter carried the memory of a courtyard and a fire and 3 denials. Paul went blind on the Damascus road before he could see clearly. The wound is not a sign that the naming was wrong. The wound is part of it. It is how you know the encounter was real. And the third thing, this is the one I want you to carry. The world will try to rename you. It has probably already tried. Babylon gave Daniel a new name, a new wardrobe, and a new curriculum, and called him Belteshazzar every day for years. And in the place where identity actually lives, in his choices, in his knees when he prayed, in his voice when they asked him to bow, he remained a Daniel. God is my judge, not the empire. The book of Revelation says something plain and strange and beautiful. To the one who overcomes, God will give a white stone, and written on the stone a new name, which no one knows except the one who receives it. A private name, a true name, one that no empire, no failure, no courtyard denial, no night of wrestling on a dark riverbank can erase. You may be in a season right now where the name the world has given you feels more real than anything else. Failure, too late. Too far gone, not enough. Jacob wrestled God with a dislocated hip and did not let go until morning. You can hold on too. If this video opens something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper into stories like this. And I will see you in the next one.